Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today for you guys I want to talk about a concept that has been discussed throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history off and on, and that is expanding the extra deck, but in a specific way. Now, I know throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history we've talked about in the Exceed era, even in the Synchro era at the end of it, and even when Links came out initially, people were talking about, oh, the extra deck should be expanded a little bit. Maybe 17, 18 cards, maybe 20, maybe that's too much. I don't know, but it should be expanded. A lot of people have felt that way. And after playing Links for, what is it, 6, 7, 8 months now we've been playing off and on, it feels like to me, for a lot of decks, older decks out there, it's really hard to transfer from Master Rule before Master Rule 4 over to Master Rule 4. It's very hard, that transition. And it's not because of the main monster zone. It's not because of that, actually. It's the extra deck space. That's what I'm trying to say. I think we're in a point right now where we have a lot of different ways we can make Link monsters. You got your Grinder Golem combos that we've had, here and there. You got your Scapegoat tokens you can do things with. You got your basic shenanigans you can do. And Konami's even introduced, archetypal Link monsters for old school base decks. Your Archfiends, your Needle Fibers for your Synchro decks, Pendulum, Link monsters that we can use to help Pendulum decks out. We have a multitude of different things thanks to the Link pack Reigns, which will get imported into different sets, it looks like. But there's a multitude of different ways that we can make Link monsters, and there's a multitude of different fodder ways that I can just put fodder on the field with Gofu, Scapegoats, whatever, to make Link monsters in that extra deck, that main monster zone, and then expand with my extra deck monster zone, and then expand out to my main monster zone with the Links pointing down, so I can do my different combo plays, and my deck will function perfectly fine. Maybe not as efficient as, before Master Rule 4, but I can still function. I can still live with that. That's cool. But not for every deck. Not for every deck out there. There's a lot of decks like Rank 4 Toolbox and, decks that functioned primarily on Synchro summons, and that's all they do. Like, random examples here, and I think they'll adapt more when Needle Fiber comes out, mind you, but, like Synchro, old Synchro, Yusei Fudo based deck. Like, a good example I could think of is some things like Gem Knights could function with it, maybe. I think Gem Knights can adapt really good now that they have a good Link monster, but just in general, like, for space-wise, like Synchrons, and then your Rank 4 Toolbox decks, especially, like, your gadgets and whatever else other things are out there nowadays. They're pretty good Rank 4 Toolbox decks that were good back in the day, and they're still pretty decent decks that, if you properly teched it out, you could win. But they're hindered not because of the main monster zone, necessarily the main extra deck space zone we use to create the Link monsters, but mainly because your extra deck space. Now let's go into this a little more deeper, and then I'll explain my solution that my friend and I came up with. So my friend and I were talking about how to expand it. He came up with this idea, and he's like, you know what, it's a great idea that we expand it. And I talked to him about it. And I know throughout history people have said, we shouldn't expand it, the extra deck zone, because you can cut down what you need to fit into that 15-card slot in your extra deck. Which, for the most part of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, I was on the fence of, yeah, you could cut down what you need. But Links changed that. It wasn't the fact anymore that 15 cards was enough I could squeeze down what is necessary and what I'm going to go for, for Exceed-based decks. But it's the fact that Links hindered these extra deck-based decks. Not because they couldn't spam the board, but because Links themselves were a means to get to their extra deck. You had to put Links in your deck to function. And it wasn't the problem that it's hard to make the Links, I have to invest things in it. Like I said, there's in the beginning of this video, multitude of different ways you can adapt to the new era. The problem is, it means I have to put them in the extra deck, which means I have to cut cards that most of the time I would go for, but I have to cut out because I need these Link monsters to function. Even for decks that, have their own Link monsters nowadays, which is great, they still need other Exceeds, Synchros, Fusions to function in 2018 still. They need these cards to function. So my friend and I continued this conversation talking about, well, maybe you don't need to expand it because you could cut down. He's like, a lot of decks are having trouble with this adaptation, I'm noticing. And from playing online and the community, where I remember early on when links first came out, people were mentioning this too, but nobody paid attention to it really because we thought, oh, we'll just adapt to the new era. But he came up with a solution, which I'm going to talk about now, to this conundrum, to make both parties kind of happy, a happy medium. And I thought it was a great idea, and I thought it was worthy of a discussion video. And that is for decks that run, so let's imagine here, you have your 15 card extra deck, all right? So I run just exceeds or synchros in my 15 card extra deck, or a mixture of synchros and exceeds, all right, in my extra deck. And that's all I run. That's all I run in there. Fusions, exceeds, synchros, that's all I run. Old school stuff, from back in the day. But I have to cut down on that. So what should I do? What's a compromise here instead of expanding the extra deck just in general to include just more things? Let's say Konami instated a policy, something of this nature. I'm not saying it's the best thing, but I think it's worthy of a discussion, where if your extra deck includes just synchros, exceeds, and fusions, and nothing else, you can expand your deck to some amount. So let's say expand the deck to 18 cards in the extra deck. So if you're 15 card limit, so I have 15 cards in my extra deck, so 5, 5, 15, and they're all synchros, then you can run 3 other cards in your deck that can only be link monsters. Like I said, it could be 18, 20, I don't know. I'm trying to go in the bare minimum because, people could abuse things with it. But you could run 3 monsters, but they have 3 extra monsters in the extra deck, but they can only be link-based monsters. They can be nothing else. They can't be synchros, they can't be exceeds, they can't be fusions. They must be link monsters. But this doesn't help. This just helps older decks compete. But at the same time, it helps just decks in general be able to function. Even if Konami, which they've been having a tendency to do lately, which they're trying to push older deck concepts and ideas by releasing new updated things to fit for the link era, which they've done a good job about, it's not going to help at the end of the day for some decks that are extra deck focused and extra deck focused on older mechanics. So I think this really helps them out. And it won't be abused by a link deck. Because like I said, if all your extra deck, 15 extra deck slots, and I don't mean all, so like if I know that like people are going to say, well, what about this and this? What I'm trying to say is, even if you're like your 15 card extra deck is all, like you had even one link monster in there, that 15 card extra deck, then you could not run any link monsters. Okay, you couldn't get that extra bump of getting 18 cards in your extra deck. I know it's a little confusing here, but that's what I'm trying to say. So for a link-based deck, if they're running like a fusion, a synchro, and then one link, nope, you can only run 15 cards in your extra deck. But if you're running all synchros or a mixture of the old stuff and then just 1 or 2 links, yeah, you can easily run links in your deck. It doesn't matter. That's fine. You can bump that up a little bit and put a couple extra links in your deck. It's a concept, so I know people may get confused and say, these different things, but that's what I'm trying to say. And I think overall, we need to talk about the fact that the extra deck, by the end of the link era, I think the extra deck, by the time we get into the next era of Yu-Gi-Oh!, and I know we're just starting the Link Vrains era, if it involves the extra deck, again, the extra deck space has got to go up. Because with links and exceeds and fusions and synchros, it's just getting absurdly tight. Where to before, if I'm trying to create an extra deck based deck, I could cut out what I didn't need and what I was not going to go for all the time. All right? That happened. I was fine with it. I understood and I agreed with it. But we're getting to a point where 15 cards is just not enough. When you're telling me I got to conform to the link-based mechanic to function. Because now I have to cut not just the, things I possibly may go for. I have to start cutting things that are essential to how my deck functions. Because an extra deck based deck is only as good as its extra deck, really. Especially if it's like a mainly, centric, this is what I do. You have to start cutting things down to even function properly. So while I think 15 cards for many decks out there is enough, you have to take into consideration that a lot of decks out there are having trouble because the loss of link the making you make links is hindering them because now they have to cut things out to function. Like I said, I don't know if this is the proper way, if this should be done, if this is a good idea, but I think at the minimum it's something that needs to be discussed about. Should the extra deck really be expanded? And if the next mechanic we get in the future is another, which it has a tendency to be synchros, fusions, synchros, exceeds, links. It always seems to be something that involves the extra deck. Even pendulums, when they go to the extra deck, it always has something to do with the extra deck. A mechanic does, it seems like nowadays, because there's so many different things you can use the extra deck for. But it's getting to a point where I think if the next mechanic we get is another extra deck based mechanic, then you're going to have to expand the extra deck because it's getting really absurd how tight, especially if we still have to play under Master Rule 4. So if I still got to go, what am I going to have to do next? To make an exceed monster, I'm going to have to make a link monster, go make an exceed, and make next mechanic to make one exceed monster. Like, you understand what I'm trying to get here. It's getting absurdly squishy and tight. And I think we need to start talking about it eventually because it's something that needs to be discussed more. No matter what you take away with this video, if this idea of expand, for decks that are old school based like this, they can run an amount of link monsters to just function in the new era. If you think that idea is bad, you have to admit, if another extra deck mechanic comes along, we may need to have to expand the extra deck because it's getting really tight if you start thinking about all the decks that are out there in Yu-Gi-Oh! And how ooh, yeah, that's getting, ooh, yeah, ooh, yeah. And it's just not even the fact that, they don't always need to go for those monsters. It's the fact that those are starting to become essential monsters that they're cutting out to function as a deck cohesively, especially extra deck based decks, like I said. But I know I'm rambling a little bit now at the end, but tell me your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear it. If you have a different idea or concept, please leave in the comment section down below. I will read over them because I love reading different ideas. But this is just one idea that a friend and I were talking about. You can go check out his channel. It's Pee-wee. He also did the Gym Night deck profile, so go check that out on my channel if you want to go see it, and then you can go see his channel from there. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Good luck dueling to all of you. Take care, everybody.